lift off to the football championship. Thanks be to God. It wasn't looking good after the first three games, but Donegal Derry saved us yesterday with a match that had proper championship feel, Alan. Like, I mean, we've Michael Murphy coming on. He's getting hopped off by McKinless. He's getting trash talked by Brendan Rodgers. He doesn't seem to give a shit. He's not even paying attention to the two lads. But, like, I mean, it just felt like this was championship. It was close. It was tense. And it was just a great game to watch.
Yeah, it was. It was real championship football and real Ulster championship football played in the best way possible. It was everything you'd expect from a game like that. And in fairness to Derry, I suppose after a league campaign, very positive league campaign, we were waiting to see could they follow that form into a big championship game. And I think when they look back at that this morning, I listened to Rory Gallagher after the game, and he was obviously very proud of his players, but I think they left a serious opportunity there behind to get a big scalp under their belts. And yeah, it was funny watching Michael Murphy. Like, I suppose he's just so used to it at this stage that every time he comes onto a field, he's always getting. I'm sure he takes a good bit of trash talk, but he's such a big man himself. Like, as you say, he didn't even flinch, and he made a big difference when he came on, kind of without kind of doing anything spectacular, but I think it was 12-8 when he came in. They were 4 down, I think, and he just looked to have a very settling influence on the team. Obviously, he won a couple of frees, kicked a couple of decent frees as well. Like, I wouldn't say they were very difficult frees, but it was still Ulster Championship. They had to be scored, and he nailed the two of them. So I thought he made a big difference when he came on, and probably had a very settling influence on the rest of the team around him. But I think it was definitely an opportunity lost for Derry. Like, they were 4 up. They had a penalty they maybe should have got, but they had a great goal chance in the second half to put them after 45 minutes. I think they won off the crossbar. It was a great move, but look, I think
terrible
Derry,
miss that though, isn't it?
Like, I mean, bad miss. Like, you need for Derry to win those games, trying to make the breakthrough. They're the sort of chances they need to take, and you don't get too many of them against a team like Donegal. It just needed a little bit more composure as they came across. Like, he could have bundled man ball everything into the net, and the goal would have stood. And it was unfortunate, but I think it was a crucial stage in the game. It kind of left Donegal in the game, and but in fairness to Derry, after that they kicked a few scores and they went 12-8 up. But look, I suppose Donegal being Donegal, you can never write them off. They showed a good bit of bottleneck epic into that game, and obviously the score from McBrearty at the end there's not too many fellas in the country can kick that score at that stage of the game. And I suppose when you're coming down the stretch, last few minutes, he's the fella you want on the end. And they looked like they worked it to get him on the end of it, and it was a great kick, to be fair to him.
It was absolutely cruel, I suppose, Colm, in the end. Like, I mean, and Chrissy McKaigue had done so well in McBrearty. He didn't give him a kick of it, if we're being honest. Did not give him a sniff of it until the last kick of the game. And he did his loop move, which Chrissy got a yellow card for, turning around facing him, making sure this wasn't going to happen. I don't know what to say to poor Chrissy McKaigue, who will be a nomination for performance of the weekend. Then McBrearty just does that.
Yeah, look, we spoke during the league a lot around how good Donegal were, and obviously the influence of Murphy and McBrearty. Obviously Murphy didn't start the game, and you could see that Donegal, weren't, they weren't firing at all cylinders. They didn't really seem up to it. Derry played it in their terms. They slowed the ball down a lot. They were happy enough to let Donegal get men behind the ball. McBrearty, by and large, was non-existent. McKaigue had fairly wrapped them up, and look, it had all the signs as the game went on that you were thinking Derry are going to take this. And Alan spoke about the goal chances they had and potential penalties, and it only takes one of them had to went in, and I don't think Donegal would have got back. But yeah, look, it's cruel. McKaigue had a great day, and on McBrearty, but big players step up on big moments, and that's the beauty of a player like McBrearty. He was so good during the league, and at times he was carrying them a bit, along with Murphy at times. So yeah, the one man that Derry didn't want on the ball with that last final kick, or it was him, and it just at his word, it was a super score under pressure. But yeah, cruel way to lose a game. But credit where credit's due. Derry probably on the balance of the game probably deserved to win it.
I think they did.
Donegal, look, they showed great determination. It was a strange game. It was very, people talk about very, very like an Ulster Championship game. It was nearly played with a wee bit of fear, I think, because both teams were happy to get men behind the ball, and it was slow at times. It was patient. They were trying to unpick each other, and There were some fantastic scores too. There's some very good long range scores. McFall had a couple, Langan had a few as well. So, there's very good glimpses of football there. But yeah, it had everything around that knockout feel, and it left it for a great watch in comparison, I suppose, what we've seen to date.
Yeah, it definitely did. What do you make of Derry running down their own clock, Alan? Would you be critical of that? Like, I mean, they weren't good chances at points, but they knew McBrearty's kick. Like, they were lucky to get the chance, even to continue on. And Coldrick wanted the equaliser. It was obvious. And it was McCluskey, McKinless, and Glass. They had half chances. But Jesus, you have to take the half chance. Like Gallagher said after the game, I certainly hoped for it, but we couldn't get it to Shane or a couple more players. At that stage of the game, you can't try to find a shooter. Like, the clock is ticking down.
Yeah, it's difficult to know as a player exactly how long's left.
And they must have asked.
Generally, if you're on the attack, especially that close to the goal, you kind of believe the referee is going to, as long as you have the ball there, he's going to let you play away until you get a shot off. Like, they were maybe in around the 45, maybe a little bit outside, and there was a couple of half chances, but they would have been speculative efforts now to try and level. And I suppose guys, they're probably talking all week about trying to get the ball to the right place in the field before you take your shot. So if somebody has a shot from out there and it skews wide, you're saying, well, it probably wasn't on. Maybe we should have tried to work it a little bit more. So I think it looked like you could see them trying to look for an opening along, but they probably just went back and forth once too often. And then David Calder said, no, we're not going to go back and forth here waiting for you to get an opportunity. He said, right, enough's enough. It was a minute and 15 seconds over, I think, so the game probably was up. But yeah, I suppose maybe if it was McGuigan or someone like that who might be renowned, but Conor Glass, maybe
Glass kicked a great one in the first half.
Great score, and it was interesting to hear. It was his like, I know he's only back from Australia, but his first score in the championship was like, he's some future ahead of him. He's 23, like, what a footballer, monster of a man. Kind of reminds me of some great Derry midfielders over the years, like Towell, Fergal Hardy, these sort of guys, and he looks a real footballer, and I'd say he's made a huge difference to that team, him coming in and seeing the score he kicked. Like, if he has that in his locker, coming from midfield, he's going to be a serious player for Derry over the coming years.
Would you be critical of them for not kicking it, Colm? Like, I think they recycled it 4 times and Coldrick went, look, you're not making any, you've turned down 3 half chances, you don't seem to be making any progress. I don't blame Coldrick for blowing it up there.
No, I think Coldrick done right. He did give them every opportunity, and I was just sort of sitting watching going, look, you either go for a speculative shot at that point, which Alan says, look, it's probably not high percentage. Like, they've probably done well, and the whole game they'd worked the ball round and round to the right angles and got the men in the right positions for 4 shots. But I was screaming for somebody just to break a line or try and go for it. Like, I think Coldrick possibly, he nearly wanted probably to level it up. Given the game that had sort of unfolded, and it sort of was unfair nearly for somebody to lose that. So in normal time, whatever. So I was screaming for somebody just to take a run at somebody, break a line, try and get in front. And but look, I can't be too critical, because Derry the whole day had been very patient in their build-ups, and they had been able to get the right men on the ball for the shot. But at the same time, if someone had a took it, if Glass had a took it or whatnot, I don't think anybody would have criticised them for too heavily, because they did score a few nice long range ones during the game. So look, it's a tough one to take for them. But yeah, look, I think you can't really blame David Coldrick either. The game was over, and he played a wee bit over to give them that opportunity. They didn't take it. So
they could have kind of tried to buy a free maybe or something. McKinless bought a lovely free off Michael Murphy, because that was not a free. Like, he grabbed his hand. That's the old school move. I think that put them level. And then McBrearty obviously got the point to win it. They could have tried to do something like that. It has to be said, we're critical of Benny Heron's miss. In fairness to him, usually when you palm a goal, you palm it straight. You don't smash it down. And he was so close that he needed to smash it down. But maybe you're just so used to palming it in a different way. He didn't.
He did have a defender there as well that he had to contend with as well a little bit. But yeah, it just needed a little bit more finesse, I think. But was it Donnelly came in along the end line with it, and like we've spoken over the last few weeks, lads hand passing the ball over the bar and stuff. In fairness to him, he had the vision to see, if I just pop this up at the back post, there's a good chance Benny Hearn is going to get his hands on this and we'll have a goal. So it was a great ball across, to be fair to him. And I think when Benny looks back at that this morning, he'll say, yeah, maybe I should have just slapped it down into the ground a little bit. Yeah, and I suppose the really good finishers, when they're in that position, they know they know what it needs to make sure the ball ends up in the back of the net. And I don't know how many goals I saw Bernard score like that when the ball had come across and like he just palmed it in. And like I said, I think when he looks back, he probably think he should have scored it, and like it was a great opportunity at that stage of the game. And like a goal in a game like that is probably worth more than 3 points, considering scores were so hard to come by.
Yeah. Well, McGuigan was robbed for a penalty too. Will we all agree on that, or do you think it's unfair? What do you think, Colm?
Yeah, look, I think it was. I think if that's anywhere else in the pitch, that's given as a free. And I obviously watched it back in the replays, and I thought it was very harshly done by. There was nearly a couple of fouls in that one play, but the very last one was nearly been pulled down by the head or whatever. Like, to me, it looked stonewall. And like that again, that's a key moment in that game. If that's a penalty and that's put away again, Alan talks about being more than 3 points. That gives Donegal a mountain to climb. So they can probably feel a wee bit harsh on that, because I felt that was, if that had been midfield or anywhere else in the pitch, that was a free.
Yeah, it didn't work very well for England last night, scoring too early. That penalty might have come a bit too early for Derry. There was a pull of the jersey and then there was a hand around the neck, which when you're running towards the goal, like a bit of your momentum's bringing you forward, so a bit of a pull like that is definitely going to have, an effect on your balance.
Yeah. It probably was a penalty. I think, like, I watched it back a few times and there were kind of two half fouls. He kind of pulled the hand away at the last minute, but he had tugged, and then he kind of grabbed him around the neck, so it probably was a penalty. And look, I suppose in real time it's difficult to see it, but I think when a fella gets in that close and there's a couple of guys around him, generally, especially a fella like McGuigan, he's looking for the net at that stage, so there's no reason he'd go to ground unless there's been contact made with him, and they were unfortunate not to get it. I think at that stage it was probably early enough that kind of Donegal had kind of plenty of time to get back into the game. I think the real critical
one
was the Heron one. That was the one that they needed to take at that stage of the game. Might have seen them home.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Kerry weren't overly impressive, Colm, were they? Like, I mean, I don't know. I saw a lot of positivity around their performance. Peter Keane said after the game, "You've no choice if there's bodies everywhere. If there's a wall up there, you just can't bazooka and blow it in. You just have to be patient and work your way towards it." I actually didn't think they were that patient. They kind of left a double sweeper there, which ruined their kick pass, instead of maybe moving somebody up on at least one of them. And because Kerry can get past one sweeper, but with two sweepers, there's no diagonal ball can beat the two sweepers. I thought they were a little bit impatient, instead of maybe going like a Dublin or a Donegal, slowing the whole thing down, moving some players up in onto the double sweeper, and working scores in that manner.
Yeah, possibly. Look, I suppose for Kerry it was just about getting over the line. I think like they looked very comfortable. Okay, they had tipped sweepers back and didn't allow that kick pass directly in the full forward line and whatnot. But at the same time, I was watching and thinking like the tip were never going to, they just didn't mount any challenge, I don't think. And like every time Kerry wanted to play through them and wanted to inject a bit of pace, they did seem to do that, and they got their scores. So yeah, look, you could be critical that they didn't really push on and really put, as you say, put two men up on them or one man up and really put them to the sword. But like sometimes when they've been in front the whole game, sometimes when you get like that, you go into a bit of a cruise control, and it is sometimes very hard to really just go for it. And yeah, the game is never in doubt really, and I think that's but I don't think there's bigger tests ahead for Kerry, and I don't think they'll meet that same wall every single day they go out. Like
no,
that's more what we've seen over the last few weeks from teams just trying to stay in it as long as they can, and that just hasn't been happening. Kerry got in front and they didn't look back. They didn't look overly impressive. They didn't look like they were going to win All Irelands with that performance, but they done what they needed to do and ultimately get the job done.
Yeah, I think Kerry are going to have to figure that out though, because there is a chance they may come up. Probably not against Dublin if they meet Dublin, but before that, there's a chance they might. Like they could play Cork next week, who might play a few defenders back. They'd be probably better than Tipperary at it. So they do need to figure out how to play both ways. Like we know Kerry want to play that lovely kicking game with the guys inside, give it into Clifford inside, but the good teams aren't going to make it that easy for them. So at some stages during games, they're going to have to run the ball, and I think they'll probably have to run it better than they did yesterday, or they'll have to figure it out better than they did yesterday. Like as Colm said, they were probably playing within themselves yesterday. They were very comfortable, but I thought they looked a bit clueless at stages, kind of trying to break that down. they were missing Darren Moynihan yesterday. Paddy Clifford played outside a little bit. I thought he did quite well. Like he's a really good foil for the other more established forwards in the full forward line and stuff, and he's willing to do a lot of that. I think every team needs a couple of guys like that are willing to sacrifice themselves for the better forwards, and he looks, as David's brother, he's probably willing to sacrifice himself a little bit like I was for Bernard as well. He's probably willing to sacrifice himself a little bit for David.
Well, the thing about it is, what I was always say with Kerry, and I don't want to labour the point, but the double sweeper, they did nothing about that. Now, if you've David Clifford on the inside line, you say, what are they doing to stop us giving it to David Clifford? That's what they want. What can we do to stop them stopping us getting it to David Clifford? Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I like just having two sweepers in front of him. His goal was absolutely outstanding, Colm. Like, I think that is a very maybe underrated goal, because we saw Diarmuid O'Connor in the second half trying a kind of outside of the right shot, and it screwed off wide. Like, to generate that much power, it wasn't as easy as it looked. But that's the thing. If a team's stopping you getting it to this man, do something to help him.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, completely. I agree with you. Like the goal itself for Clifford was brilliant. I think it was a serious run by Gavin White, and led off, and the finish was never in doubt. And yeah, look, Clifford. You want to get your key man on the ball a lot more. But the problem is, if you push him out the field again and try and get him on handy ball, he's not really as dangerous. So yeah, look, Alan's right. Probably they do have to figure this out, but and they might come up against it maybe next week, or against Cork and whatnot. But ultimately, I still think there's bigger days for Kerry. I think that when they come up against whoever it is, and later down the line, they're not going to face that. So yes, they might get Cork might flood their defence again, but I still think they're going to have enough to get by. So they definitely played within themselves. They definitely have things to work on, but I think if they get to Croke Park and spaces open up, that double sweeper is a lot harder to implement. Like we've seen it for years where we're playing that, maybe double sweeper and men behind the ball, and once you get to the big wide open spaces of Croke Park, there's no hiding places. So I think, while there's stuff to work on, I still, to be honest, I was fairly impressed with in terms of their work rate, especially their forwards. They were trying to turn teams high up. They were trying to turn tip over high up the pitch. They were, even when they were in front and then winning the game quite easily, they were still working really hard. The guys come off the bench that are going to be able to do damage down the line. So look, like not a jaw-breaking performance, but I to be honest, was still fairly impressed by what I've seen.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I do. I agree on the way they press high up the field, and I do. You see, Derry are pressing kickouts, and Donegal are pressing kickouts. But the minute they lose the kickout, they give up. But you still have players, so you can still turn them over after one or two hand passes. But it's like they give up and go, right, well, we put a lot of pressure on the kick out, but now let's go back. Whereas Kerry, they almost want the team maybe for someone to catch it so that they can all close in on him. And Dublin do that brilliantly too. Mayo do that brilliantly. Why do the press half-heartedly? Like, what? There's two parts of the press. There's the press on trying to intercept the kick out and, win it that way. But there's also the second, you have all your forwards up there. Let's try and win it if they win it.
Yeah, well, I suppose the reason that teams don't maybe is that if the ball bypasses the forwards, then all of a sudden you only have 8 or 9 players back. Yeah. Whereas when you lose the kick out, a lot of teams try drop to the half forward line or out to midfield just to try and compress the field. So then to meet the defenders coming out, the field's a bit tighter and you can get tackles on easier. But the really good teams try and press high. So once they go after the kick out, they really go after it. And then they'll still have, they'll be that well organised that if the opposition can get the ball out past the forwards, that one of the half forwards or somebody will be dropping back, or a midfielder will be dropping back, like Dennis Bastick would have done to let Keane O'Sullivan drop off or whatever. So we would have worked a lot on that, trying to press high and kick outs, but kind of still being aware of what's going on behind. And if somebody breaks through, that we can get back quick, that we can get somebody free, that we can get Keane O'Sullivan free back there to act as a sweeper. But if you're playing a double sweeper, it's very difficult to do that because you're basically taking 2 men out of your out of your forward line. So but certainly I'd expect Kerry to do that when they come up against Dublin, and certainly Dublin will do it. And Colm would have lots of experience with that because they would have tried lots of different ways of pressing.
Yeah, look, the big problem we used to have, like, and again, like, you do see it even with you saying Donegal and Derry as well. There, like, you wanted to press up, and you really wanted to squeeze teams, but the moment you don't win that kick out, I know for Tyrone's point of view for a few years there, like, but obviously I was going back, and if I left my man too early, there was a kick pass in the midfield, and that whole press had broke down. So it's about working, trying and that cohesion and that forward line of going together. And Kerry seem to have it down to a nice art there. In Dublin obviously have it as well, where they're working, they're all covering for each other, while still having that mindset that if the ball bypasses, they're able to get a man back in to sort of mind the house, because you're open if you. Like, there's times we used to, when you're maybe behind in a game and you're full court press, you're literally going for it, and some one man sleeps, or one man gets a run on you, and the ball's in behind us, one on one inside. So I can see why, I suppose, Donegal and Derry maybe doing it. Kerry, I'd say that's what really impressed me with Kerry at the weekend. They were taking a bit more. It's a bit more of a risk. They're trying to press. They're trying to get the ball turned over. And if they do, the good thing about pressing high up, obviously, is if you're in a scoring position right away, and teams aren't set up against you. So staying high up the field is probably the way teams should be going now. But I think with the knockout pace at the moment, teams are, I know the few games at the weekend, you're really a wee bit worried that if a goal goes in, it is a long way back, given scores are at premium.
Yeah, maybe that's it. It's just like, I mean, it's probably a little bit of a fear thing. But when they're up there, they might as well stay doing it. Is kind of my point. I'll keep maybe a wing forward on the other side, Alan, that's not involved in that press, will sneak around, and maybe be able to get back there. You probably use your own brain.
Yeah, I do. And as a forwards unit, like, we would have worked a lot over. And you can see the top teams, when the forwards are pressing, they're pressing as a unit. It's not one or two guys. You have everyone, and you're trying to force the team over onto the sideline so you can press them in that side of the field. If they turn it back and go back over the sideline, you can see all 5 or 6 guys will all shift across to the other side. And you could actually see it watching Italy in the soccer last night. You could see when they press one side, all their midfielders tried to press over to kind of condense England to one side of the field. The same in the Gaelic, you're trying to force them down the sideline, set traps for them down the sideline, so that if you can get 2 guys to them there to try and force a turnover. And as Colm says, the higher up the field you can turn the ball over, the greater the reward is. And so it's the really brave teams that are really organised, the Kerrys, the Dublins, the Tyrones, that can turn teams over high up the field, that are going to get the best results out of it. And like, I think that's ideally the way you want to play, but it takes a lot of communication, a lot of cohesion in the forward line, and a lot of practice to get it right. So I think that's why you see teams maybe not quite ready to do it. The likes of Derry, say, maybe Rory thought, right, we're not really ready to really go after the kick out. We'll contest the first ball. If we don't win the first ball, then we need to get into our shape, so we can meet Donegal coming at us around the midfield area.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. There's no doubt about that. 2 red cards, lads. Quinlivan red. I think we'll all agree that was a red. Little bit petulant, got pissed off, wasn't playing well, and gave a little punch. There was not much in the punch. Do you think it was harsh? But look, he punched, I suppose. Yeah. Look, to be honest, he didn't hurt the player. It was just petulant and stupid. If it wasn't a red, you wouldn't really give out too much about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have given out about it all. I saw it and I kind of watched it back a second time. I suppose if you're looking at the letter of the law, maybe you're saying, yeah, it's a red, but God, it was harsh. You could see when it happened as well. He couldn't believe that he's actually done it as well, because he's not.
It's just a red mist.
Dirt in him at all. He's obviously just, maybe he hadn't been getting on as much ball as he would have liked if the game was going away from him. But he's not that sort of player at all. So.
When you're playing badly and you make a mistake and someone pushes you like that, you really need to just breathe. You know what I mean? Because this is just, there's no need for it. Come here, you. Yeah. And you're kind of going, I think that's what Quinlivan did. The McNamee one is more interesting, Colm, in that this was stupid too, because it was right in front of the referee. But all he did was push him. Now, if he pushed him in the chest, that's not a yellow. It's not even a yellow card. He pushed him in the face. It wasn't a punch. It was a push. So I don't know what to think of this one, outside of he was purely stupid to do it. But I don't think that was a red.
Yeah, it's you see it happening throughout the games off the ball a lot. People pushing each other and pushing in the face, and it never really gets picked up. You never see a linesman too often give it. So I think Ronnie was fairly silly of him just to do it right in front of the referee. But I watched it and thought, look, that's fairly harsh. Now, I don't know what the letter of the law says. I don't know what the rule book says, but given what happens in a lot of games, I didn't feel that it warranted really a red. I thought that potentially, but then at the same time, if you people talk about lifting your hand once it goes up, once you lift your hand at height at someone's face, you're giving the referee an opportunity to send you off. So it was just probably a wee bit silly from his point of view. He's an aggressive type player. He doesn't. He likes to get in that hustle and bustle. But I would imagine that Tyrone may actually try and get that overturned, or try and appeal it in some shape or form.
Yeah, because Joe Brawley was tweeting about this. This is from a legal perspective. He says it's legally an assault, unwanted physical contact, that is not trivial, but not in the law is it a strike. To illustrate, if Ronan had pushed his opponent in the chest with his palm instead of the face, it would not be a red. The fact it was the face is legally irrelevant. So maybe he will get off, because that would keep him out of the Donegal game, and he'd be a big loss. I want to talk quickly. We'll talk about Tyrone in part 2 and Donegal and Derry. I want to talk quickly about Cavan. And Pádraig Faulkner said last week before the game, if we lose to Tyrone, it's probably one of the worst years in Cavan football history. I would say the worst, because they won no championship game and they're down in the Division 4. Like, I mean, it looks like Mickey Graham is staying with them anyways, because he says we'll regroup, we'll reflect and review, and we'll look at a lot of things we didn't do right over the course of the year, etc., etc. So he's definitely staying with them. I don't think there should be pressure on Mickey Graham. It's just interesting, like, following up a good win the next year. Like, I mean, how can it go so wrong? I suppose for Tipperary, and like Tipperary never expected it, but they were relegated as well. How can it go so wrong like that, Alan?
Yeah, I'd say it's difficult for Mickey Graham to put his finger on exactly where this has gone so wrong. And I suppose we spoke last week about how when things aren't going well, what do you look at? All you can go back is you can look at, I'm sure their preparation was okay. I'm sure they were happy with their preparation. So all you can do is look at the games in itself and have a look at the KPIs or the stats you're trying to hit, and what areas of the field are we losing these matches in. And I think, like we said a few weeks ago, Cavanagh was like, they probably came from nowhere to win the Ulster Championship last year as well, so they're probably not as good as maybe what they looked last year.
No, that's
they're
a
not
factor,
as bad.
yeah.
They're definitely not as bad as what we've seen from them this year. And I think it was Kieran Wheeler said in the Sunday game, it looked like in the first half that they were ready to pack up and go home. They just had enough of it this year, and I think they kind of played like a little bit like that as well. They like, there was no danger of them really winning that game at any stage, and like, I thought they made it easy for Tyrone, and like I say, they'd be happy enough just to get this year done. We'll go back to the drawing board and have a look and go back hard at it next year. And we said, look, maybe it's difficult after the effort they put in maybe over the last couple of years to win an Ulster Championship, to go back to the well again for those guys. That's probably the pinnacle of their careers, if we're being honest about it, last year. So to go back to the well again, it's a bit like us winning the All-Ireland in 2011. Like, you come out in 2012 and you're just not at the same pitch. No matter what you do, you just can't get back to the same pitch. You just can't get the same hunger. And you fall short, same as happened to us in 2012. And it could just be as simple as that. And maybe they just need a break now for a few months and come back again.
And that's a big thing. But also, the manager the year after, unless you're Jim Gavin and you have no feelings whatsoever, the manager is very loyal to the lads who won him that All-Ireland. Like, say Gilroy, for example. Like, he probably wouldn't want to change that team too much. You've got me over the line. I love you guys.
Yeah, well, I think, and you're always willing to give lads a year. Like, they've done it for me last year. I'll give them a year to prove, can they do it again? And it's very difficult maybe to get rid of guys the year afterwards. If you get, when the year doesn't go well, say for Cavan this year, now Mickey Graham can make some decisions. Okay, you did well for me last year, but you haven't done it this year, so I need to make some changes here. So there could be a bit of that as well. So there could be lots of reasons, but I think he'd be happy. And I think he's right to stay on. Like, he did a great job with them last year. Look, it hasn't gone well this year, but he can get them back to the drawing board, and I'm sure they'll be fine next year.
Yeah, Thomas Galligan's always an interesting one, isn't it, Colm? Like, I mean, why put him full forward when you're not going to kick him the bloody ball? Isn't it such a waste?
Yeah, look, I thought it was a fairly strange one having him in there. And especially, like, Tyrone, we're never going to let that be just, man on man inside, and just no. I just knew that whenever he went in, it actually suited us. That was going to work. Having him out around the middle, probably, like, he's a fantastic player. He can win ball. He can carry at speed. He's so many good attributes. Having him in there. Definitely wasn't, in my eyes, when I seen it, I was thinking this will play right into our hands, and it sort of did in a way. So, like, a strange one, but I can see what they're at. I suppose the advanced mark, they were thinking probably, if we can get a few marks in here with him, there's scores to be had, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work out the way they planned it. So yeah, look at Cavan are just gonna have to regroup after this game. Alan talked about there, when you have a good year, nothing changes, and when you have a bad year, the whole thing changes, and that's typically the way it is. Like, Tyrone done it, we done it. I've seen it through my career where you get to an All-Ireland final, or you win an Ulster title, and maybe you get nipped, and everything's good. You're sort of positive, and the manager doesn't want to change too much up. You've no real youth coming in. While if you lose a game early in the championship, I've seen us getting back to trials early doors, and maybe 10, 12 boys being brought in, and that sometimes is needed regardless of you win or lose. The margins are so tight in this game where you win by a point and you're best in the world, nothing changes. You lose by a point, everything's that's reset. So it's a fine margin game, and I think Mickey will just have to regroup. And as I said, you could probably see wholesale changes next year in Cavan, with guys coming in and out, and team changes and whatnot. And that's sometimes we just have to do, but you can't blame him for what he done with the the positive season he had last year, winning Ulster title. And as Alan said, coming from absolutely nowhere, I don't think anybody would have picked them last year. So look, they've just got to regroup them. Game in their hands going forward, and look, and maybe do them no harm in the long term.
I think it's an interesting point about no changes. Like you mentioned, Jim Gavin. Like no matter what happened the previous year when Jim was in charge, no one felt safe going into the following year, and he always brought at least one or two young guys through every year, and that was on purpose. Like he went looking to try and get two guys through so we could keep the thing fresh, could keep guys on their toes. And it's easy to do when you're Jim Gavin and you're kind of winning All Ireland with Dublin.
And you've a lot of talent coming through.
Obviously, you mightn't have obviously don't have the strength and depth in other countries, but it was Jim Gavin did that on purpose to keep guys on their toes, to keep guys who are established in the team. There's no one safe here unless you're performing day in, day out. I've guys coming in behind us here to put into the team, so it's just an interesting point.
No, it definitely is. And Brian Cody did something similar with Kilkenny when they were going. He'd always bring one or two to make sure everybody wasn't safe. There's not much to say about the Leitrim game. This is lousy on poor Leitrim, like a Division 4 team. I'd say when a lot of the Leitrim players saw the draw against Mayo, a knockout game, like what are you going to be thinking? He says, here, look, I'm not entertained. Like I don't think they didn't have everybody. That's understandable. They couldn't even sell the tickets. This is Mayo, absolutely football mad. County 3,500 in McHale Park, and they were left 1,000 short, so only 2,500 at it. Would you pay 30 quid to go to that and wear a mask the whole way outside through and just sitting in the stand? And apparently you're being watched very closely. Like I don't know, in Ireland there's no real laws to wear masks outside. In Spain there is. I was over there, but I don't know why you have to wear a mask at a bloody GA match outdoors if you can walk down the street without a mask. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe that's turning people off, who knows. But I would say the mask is probably down the list of the reasons. The hammering that was expected, and I suppose the 30 euros to watch it, and it's on television. It's probably understandable, even though Mayo are completely crazy support-wise, Alan.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be a match that you would have been that quick to turn on, to be honest with you. But I think it's easy, like we talk about Derry and Donegal, and we have a championship now, but it's easy to forget what's gone on in the few weeks before. It's easy. It can be easy to gloss over what happened to Leitrim yesterday, and it just re-emphasises like the need for change with the whole championship, because it's just, and I've said before, if I was in charge of Leitrim, I was playing with Leitrim, what's important now is the league. Forget about the championship. Like if you were playing for Leitrim, I know guys can't go to the States whatever this summer, but would a championship now stop you going, that you could play for Leitrim in the championship, stop you going to the States? Nothing would have stopped you going to the States anyway. So I'm asking the wrong man the question, but like kind of playing for Leitrim in the championship now wouldn't stop you going, why would you stay at home from the States or miss a summer that you could head away in a J1 or whatever? Like play the National League, try to get up to Division 3, but after that, like that should be the goal, because the championship at this stage, and the gap's just getting wider and wider. Like it's not getting closer, it's not getting wider and wider. The gap between the teams is getting bigger because of the preparation, the time guys are putting in, and it is a real problem, and I presume it will be looked at this year, because
no, it is being looked at. It's being looked at Special Congress. This is why I get a little bit frustrated when I see this happening, and for years I used to be tearing my hair out when you'd see these lopsided results, especially, mostly we're getting them in Leinster, now you're getting them in all the provinces. When is this going to change? And finally, John Horan, to be fair to him, he set up a committee to come up with new championship structures. There's 2 new ones, and there is the status quo. There's 3 options at Special Congress. They're going to debate it. So it's going to be a league-based championship, some messing with the provincials where you make 4/8, so you have to move counties around, I don't know, and then keep it as it is. So my hope is that all this debate is going to end. They'll change the championship at Special Congress, and we won't have to worry about this anymore. So I've spent too many shows. I was going to talk about get rid of the provincials, but sure, there's a good chance that it'll happen anyway. So I don't want to get into it, because there's much more interesting conversation to be had here, Colm. So on the BBC coverage, I was watching Your Brother on RTE, and then I remember tweeting that Pat Spillane looked like he wanted to go to the toilet. He was kind of dancing on the spot, and So a few different lads on Twitter told me, get over to the BBC, it's all kicking off. So I didn't get to see the actual row, but I saw a transcript of it, and it was between Mickey Harte and Ushie McConville. So I'll read it out to you. Starting with Mickey Harte here. I just want to pick up on something that Usheen said at the start. He described this game as defensive, and that's doing it a disservice. Now here we go, right? The minute Mickey Harte hears defensive, he starts getting on the offensive. So McConville says, I didn't say it was defensive. Harte said, oh, you did. And you said there's a lot of defensive football being played here. McConville said, no. I said they were getting bodies back. That doesn't mean defensive football. Harte, no, I'm sorry. You used the words defensive. McConville, no, I didn't. Getting a little bit petulant here now. Then Mickey Harte, you did. You just check it out there. He was looking at the cameraman then to get it checked out. That's what's happening around the game. People talk about being negative. They talk about being defensive. And they talk about blankets and all sorts of stuff. McConville, when I said that, I was praising Derry. I was praising them for getting those bodies back. Mickey Harte, that's right. I'm just telling you to mind the language because it's better to say that it's quality football and the defenders are the people playing well with real skill here today, more than the forwards. Like, I don't know, Colm. I've interviewed Mickey Harte enough times to know that he has a serious bee in his bonnet about that word defensive football. And who does he think he is telling Ushie McConville to mind his language, though? That's definitely another part of it.
Yeah, look, I'd read about this afterwards. I didn't see it in live time. But look, yeah, Mickey never liked the word defensive over the years. I suppose we in Tyrone had been sort of branded with that brush of defensive, and negative, peak football, call it what you will. So definitely one thing that would probably set him off would have been that. I'm not sure of the difference between defensive football and getting a lot of bodies back because it's pretty similar in what they're trying to talk about. They're talking about the same thing really, but it's just probably the way Oisín had sort of put it across of defensive. But look, yeah, like Mickey, I say, has had that branded. There's a lot of media coverage over Tyrone over the last number of years with that sort of them titles around defensive and negative football, and he didn't like it. And to be fair to him, he always had an answer for to us as a group of why we were playing good football. It was okay, as Oisín said, bodies back and a lot of men behind the ball, but Mickey did see it as good in the way that we were racking up scores and racking up good score lines against teams, and he nearly called it in a way a good attacking approach because we were scoring. So what more do you want? And in a way, that game of the weekend as well. Like it did have a lot of men back, or defensive football, call it what you will, but it was still enjoyable to watch. I think if you look at the flip side of what we've seen today in the championship around teams beating teams by 10, 12, 14, 20 points, whatever it is, that to me was a breath of fresh air. But back years ago, probably when we were playing, I remember playing Donegal a few times, and especially the Ulster final in 16 possibly, where the score was 10, it was 11-10 or whatever it was, and there was a lot of bodies back in defensive football. So Mickey's had this probably in his head for the last number of years, that Tyrone especially have been tarnished with this defensive style football. So for Oisín's probably just an unlucky one to unpick it at a game they got there where he's been the one to set him off. So look, I don't know the difference between what they're both talking about the same thing in a way. It's just the way they've brought it across.
Yeah, I remember interviewing him the time Sean pulled down McManus. I was working for Off the Ball as a sideline reporter, and I was talking to Mickey after the game, and I made the mistake. And what about the pull down there with Sean Cavanagh? Oh, he lit on me, so he did. Yeah, I think Darrell O'Shea and David Brady were up in the co-com. They were in the stitches laughing. Like, I mean, he could be scary enough when he wants to turn on you like that. So I'd say Oisín he was on the back foot, and Oisín had nothing to be on the back foot about. The analysis there is it was a defensive game. What the hell is wrong with that? There's nothing offensive about saying that. We'll come back in part 2 and we'll maybe do a little bit of analysis on how it was an enjoyable defensive game. All right, so Donegal 16 points, Derry 15 points, and like we were talking just at the end of part 1 there about it being an offensive game, it was absolutely a defensive game. But why was it so enjoyable? Because both teams attacked with everyone and they defended with everyone. So it was like a 14 on 14 at one end, 14 on 14 at the other end. Now, obviously, McBrearty was staying back. McGuigan was trying to stay back, but I think McMahon was attacking, and he ended up in the defence as well, Alan. But, like, I mean, when Colm talked about the 5 years ago defensive game versus a defensive game now, the very obvious difference like with me, is the Rory Gallagher teams of the past wouldn't send all their players into attack. They leave the double sweeper back. They're probably attacking, with maybe 8 versus 12. Players are doubling up, the turnover happens, then a counter-attack. You don't see that as much now because every man has a man in the attacking sense. There's loads of bodies there, but it's not as horrible to watch. And one thing I thought was very obvious with Derry yesterday, they have everybody back, but when they win the ball, if they win the ball back, they're not looking to counter. They'll slow it right down, and you see McGuigan and you see a few of their forwards tearing back up the field to get a little bit of their shape back, and now they start their attack. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's obvious. It's nothing like Mickey Harte needs to relax and say a defensive game now in my head, and I used to be critical of the 5 years ago games. A defensive game now isn't that this horrible, boring game where you're, a Monaghan for mana game. These kind of games. They're grand now, and stop getting offended by a defensive game, because the great thing is we've lots of attacking games now, and throw in one of them good intense defensive games. I've no problem with that.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, Wooly. Like when I would have started playing, or we would have started playing, when you were working on defence, it was nearly very much the 6 backs and the 2 midfielders would work on defence, and the 8 forwards would work on forward play. Whereas now it's teams prepare for how they're going to defend as a unit of 15, and they prepare for how they're going to attack as a unit of 15. So, like, if you think back to, say, Donegal in 2011, or a couple of Rory's teams after that, even a couple of Mickey Harte's teams as well, they weren't willing to commit. Like, they wanted to defend. Once they turned the ball over, they weren't willing to commit men forward. Whereas Mickey changed a little bit, to be fair to him, and he started to commit men to the forward line because they needed to get more scores. Rory's obviously done it as well. He's figured out how to set up a team defensively, but when we win the ball, we want to commit men to into the attack so we can score. So it's changed from 5 or 10 years ago, and like every team plays like that now. There's no, like, what's an attack-minded team now? Is it somebody that leaves their 6 forwards up? Like, there's no team leave their 6 forwards up all the time. So everyone is playing this like, the game has evolved, and everyone is playing, when they don't have the ball, the 15 players are defenders, and when they have the ball, probably 12 or 13 players are attackers, and cornerbacks can go, the good team wing backs can go. So it's very much evolved into, when you lose the ball, you're a defensive unit. When you have the ball, you're an offensive unit, and that's the way the game is now. It's not like it was 10 years ago when we would leave 4 or 5 forwards up. We just wouldn't bother defending, leave that to the 2 midfielders and the 6 backs.
I'd like to see that the odd time, only they can't stay up because their men attack, you suppose. When it's all attack and all defend, it's probably difficult. I do think the more attacking teams will try to leave 3 up, and they will stay up unless their man heads on. Now maybe Dublin turn around and they're dropping maybe to the half forward line.
Yeah, they will. They will drop down, and like I think Mickey has a point. Like, when he talks, like I can see what he's trying to say. That there's an art and a skill in how a team defend as well, and if that means 15 men end up behind the ball because they're trying to stop a score, then so be it. That's everyone doing their job for the team. But when they turn it over, they got to commit men to the attack, and we saw that yesterday when they had, and you said Shane McGuigan trying to get back up to get a bit of shape, to get a bit of stretch back in the field, so that if they want to give a kick pass, they could give a kick pass in. So the game has evolved, and I think that's the way the game is now. Everyone's going to defend as a unit, and everyone's going to attack as a unit.
How do you see it, Colm?
Yeah, similar. And I think Mickey used to speak off of this when we were talking about Mickey. He used to speak an awful lot around football players. He nearly didn't refer to us as defenders, attackers, midfielders. He sort of was always hammering home to us that we all needed to be able to do everything. So we all needed to be able to score. We all needed to be able to defend. We all needed, you know what I mean? So, like, the game has evolved. There's absolutely no doubt. It's in an ideal world, you'll want to put all your men up top, and all this lovely fancy kick passing in, and there will be days where that will happen. I think as the championship goes on, there will be once you start getting to Croke Park, there is more opportunity to kick the pot. Like, I didn't think it was very, like, Donegal Derry at the weekend, while it was such a great game to watch, I'm not sure how many kick passes there was direct in the full forward line. Very, very little. So I do think the game's moved on. Nearly the way people are defending at the moment is slightly different. Like, we used to get back in a pack as such. We nearly used to set up like a 3-2-1, whatever. Like, you weren't really responsible for a man. You were just trying to close that middle out. While a lot of teams now are getting back. Okay, they're getting back into a shape, but as soon as the opposition men start coming in, they start picking them up again. So
they move out on them.
You move out on them. There used to be a lot of men like I said, we never marked a man. We were literally just shuffling, a bit like Italy and England. You were shuffling left to right, and just trying to cut out space. And that sometimes it worked very well, but teams obviously Dublin, like Dublin, not worked that out. But now the game has shifted a wee bit in that defensive piece where once the opposition comes in, you're responsible for a man. So it nearly goes back to man on man defending, and that's where technically I was watching Kerry and Tip obviously, and I felt Tipperary were very naive in their skills. The way they were defending, they're technically weren't great defenders in that, and Kerry were able to cut through them. So I think and that's why games are probably a bit more enjoyable to watch, because there is a lot more man on man. Yes, there's 14 or 15 back, but it's ultimately coming down. If you get it one on one with your man, you're able to go past them and maybe unlock a score. While back in the day, a few years back, it was you could buy you one man and you're just automatically met with two or three, and the balls shuffled back out and back around, and it's very laboured and lateral. So it has moved on, and there's definitely it's definitely more enjoyable to watch, I think. From obviously it was difficult for me back because I was still playing. I thought it was great as long as we won, but looking back now, I think things have definitely moved on in the right direction.
Yeah, no, and like obviously a criticism of Tipperary leaving the two double sweepers, which you don't see anymore, is that they didn't push out on the likes of Thomas Sullivan, who was able to kick 2 points, and most of the good teams won't allow that. But in Tipperary's defence, they probably said, double sweeper, keep Clifford out of it, versus maybe giving Tom Sullivan a shot. So I wouldn't criticise Tipperary for that, for those tactics either. Like, I mean, it was a great game. Niall O'Donnell came into it really really well. Derry started the game well. Donegal took over. Second half, Derry started really well, and Donegal and Niall O'Donnell was a big part of how Donegal got back into the game. And tactically, I thought it was interesting. McKinless was dropping off him, and nobody seemed to be picking him up. And Gallagher had to bring on a sub, number 18, McCluskey, to actually man-mark O'Donnell. You could hear Gallagher the whole way through the game, and on the sideline, he was like an extra sideline reporter or something like that, but he was shouting at your man, stay on O'Donnell, because he was coming into the game strongly, Alan, at that point.
Yeah, he's a good playmaker, and he linked it up very well, kicked a couple of good scores, and I think Colm referred earlier on, some of the score taking in the game was exceptional from both sides, and like there obviously wasn't a lot of space in forwards line, in either forward line. The guys were under pressure kicking, like McFaul kicked a couple of great scores under pressure.
He kicked 3 sensational scores, and I was thinking that, what's this lad good at? Because he played in the full forward line, and saying he doesn't have any danger in there. Then now he's a working half forward. So if he can marry the working half forward with those bloody scores, like, you could have a really good number 12 there.
I was actually thinking myself this morning, when I was coming in, I was having to think about it. I was like, is he renowned for this? Does he do this week in without? And he probably doesn't kick scores like that week in without. Colm probably knows him a bit better, but he if you can add that to his game now, and like Conor Glass kicked an exceptional score, Langan kicked a couple of great scores. Obviously, McBrearty's won in the end, so it was a game of the highest quality, and call it defensive, call it what you want. It was intense. Everyone wanted to win. Everyone was tackling hard. Everyone attacked hard. It was a great game, and some of the score taking was probably the highlight of it.
Yeah, but the key for me for this, like, you're watching Donegal, and you think of what we spoke around the last number of weeks with Donegal was their key men of McHugh, McBrearty, and Murphy. Murphy obviously didn't start, but steadied the ship when he came in. McBrearty was marked out of it for the full game, really, bar the last, and McHugh, I didn't think had very much of an influence in the game either. So
no.
Derry got their tactical side of things spot on, and when Niall O'Donnell obviously started to take over, you could hear Gallagher getting to get somebody on him. So Derry done everything right in this game, and I say they're probably very unlucky not to come through it. Donegal from their side, it's still a sign of a good team, which worries me a wee bit, because their big players didn't perform. They were taken out of the game, and they still end up winning. So. I don't know where that leaves them going forward, but Tyrone will have to. Normally you go, if Tyrone are sort of looking at this going, can we stop them big men? The Niall O'Donnells, Langans, and whatnot. They're still able to chip on scores, and it shows a good strength and depth for Donegal in terms of what they have.
Michael Langan's ability to generate power from a standing position is just incredible, isn't it? Like, there's no run up. He can actually just get a ball just without even taking a step, and just stroke it over the bar, Alan.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing skill, yeah, and like you see it every now and again from guys, but it is very difficult off a standing start.
Really difficult
to kind of get the height and the distance he does, and he's a real threat at, like, the score. He's great pace as well. Like, he's He's a really good footballer. McNeilish came on as well, who probably hasn't featured much over the last couple of years. Like he's a brilliant footballer as well, so they'll expect a bit more from him. But I think just come back to like the Collins point, where are Donegal at? I think the best preparation for any game is a tight game the week before or the couple of weeks before. So Donegal will get huge learnings out of that game. Like in a close game like that, obviously it showed up a few weaknesses they have, showed up a few cracks that now they can now spend the next couple of weeks kind of going over and making sure they're fixed for an Ulster semi-final, whereas the likes of Tyrone maybe had an easier game. Some of those cracks mightn't show up until it's too late. So I always found from my own experience that the tighter the games in the lead into the next round or whatever, or the lead into an All-Ireland series, the better. Because you start to see things or you start to see issues you may have. So I think that game will really stand to Donegal going into the Ulster semi-final now.
I think it will. When you look at it, the whole way through that game, Colm, you're thinking this is Derry's day, because, like I said, their points they were scoring were spectacular. They had goal chances. You know, they looked like the better team, if we're being honest, for most of the game. And Declan Bonner said after the game, he said, this team would have been questioned in terms of character down through the years. Yeah, Donegal can play football, but when it comes to the crunch, maybe we don't get over the line. But we got over the line in a very tight game there today. And like the points you're making, none of not too many of the Donegal players, played that well. That is a game Donegal could easily have lost. When you look at the Cavan game last year, is this a Donegal team now that has grown a little bit more, have come through that tight game that they might have lost?
Yeah, possibly. I didn't see how Donegal were going to come through. Derry had everything right in their matchups. One thing that impressed me about Derry was their fitness levels and their aggression. Every time Donegal got the ball, Derry were looking for double ups and try and dispossess. They just had a serious work rate, and their scores they were taking. Everything just seemed to marry up for a Derry win. And Donegal's key men weren't playing. They were marked out of it. I genuinely was sort of shocked at the end. Now, you have to give Donegal serious credit, because it's very hard to fix when you're playing like that and you're very laboured. And I thought they were very slow and laboured at times. And you think, how are we going to change this? It's very, very hard to change and sort of just flip. You can't just flip a switch. And Alan talked about fixing things. They will now. They've come through a hard match. They've come through a game that they probably shouldn't have won, and it'll definitely stand them. And they're probably, obviously last year losing to Cavanagh they're a year further on, and the guys have sort of stepped up. The guys that you wouldn't, well, bar McBrearty, the guys that probably weren't renowned for taking the game to the scruff of the neck did it at the weekend. So they're definitely in a good enough place. But I watched, like, if they play like that against Tyrone, I don't see how they come through, but again, we don't know what's going to the Tyrone game. I'm not sure where they're at either. So it's definitely positive from a Donegal point of view in terms of getting over the line, but there was an awful lot of things that they didn't do very well at the weekend.
Well, I'll stay with you with Tyrone then. So what are the positives with Tyrone? The obvious one is Cathal McShane's back, scored 3 points, let one or two spill off his chest, but look the danger that we know he is. Con Fitzpatrick, where did you pull this fella out of? I like the look of this lad. He has a bit of go in him. He's able to get up, and you were struggling for midfielders since you retired. Why have we not seen this lad before?
I've been harping on for the last number of weeks at home, going why I can't understand it, because I marked him a couple of years back in the club championship game, and he absolutely destroyed me. And he then went on. We ended up putting a man marker on him, and he destroyed him too. And I remember just thinking, Jesus, lads, like he can catch, serious pace, he can score. I think the question marks around Colm has been probably, can he defend? Can he go back and help out in that sort of defensive duty? And that's been, I think that's why Tyrone probably haven't played him to date. But from the sound bites coming out of the camp over the last number of weeks, that he was playing fairly well in house, and like he had a super game at the weekend. I felt that having big Brian Kennedy come in as well was the two of them nearly worked really well together. Brian would be more renowned for, I know he scored a goal, but he's normally renowned for his tackling, his ability in the air and whatnot. And them two guys are interesting because they could form a fairly formidable partnership if they get it right. And obviously, look, there's going to be bigger days next week. Against Donegal, it's going to be a massive step up in class. So that'll tell them where the midfielders are at. McCurry, obviously, look, I'm not sure. Like, one of the best performances I've seen from him. We just done everything right, and a very, very positive. You've got McShane coming back. Yeah, scored a good point, let a few bounce off him, but massive to have him back. Tyrone had no McKenna at the weekend as well, so he's to come back in.
What's wrong with him,
There's
Colm?
a lot of. I genuinely don't know. I have a lad working with us. He's on the panel, Ben McDonald, who actually came on at the
He did,
weekend
yeah.
there, but they're not letting anything they're not letting anything out in the open, even to me. So I genuinely don't know what there was rumors around Tyrone that he picked up an injury in a game. There was the usual, like there was COVID rumors. There was a whole raft of things going ahead. So I genuinely don't know why McKenna wasn't playing the weekend. But if he gets back, and look, you're bringing boys off the bench at the minute, like Mark Bradley came on at the weekend. There's a couple other lads there that I know that can come in and do a bit of damage. So from a forward point of view, Tyrone are in a really positive position. The midfield, which would have been their sort of worry at the start of the year, they were sort of chopping and changing. They didn't know who was coming in and out or who was going to be best placed. So maybe they've unearthed a good partnership in them two boys. And defensively, that's where I suppose that they'd be happier that defensively the way they played at the weekend. But I think trying to get McNamee back for it would be for the next game is going to be vitally important for them.
Yeah, no, it definitely. One, like McCurry is obviously outstanding. We'll talk about him in a minute, and the supply of ball into him was absolutely outstanding as well. Like, I mean, it's one thing having a lad in there, but you have to try and find him. Like Donnelly found him a lovely ball, Harte with a lovely ball, McKiernan from cornerback found him with a few balls as well, and it was very obvious that this was a Tyrone tactic, and he was moving brilliantly, and it was get it as far as we can up the field, and then look for him. It was a very obvious game plan, which might have been a bit too obvious for Donegal because they'll obviously have a plan for it next week. But McShane throws that in, throws another little angle in on that as well for Donegal to think about. The midfield looks good with Kennedy and Fitzpatrick. They need that against the bigger teams to have a bit of physicality and size out there. I don't know, without Tyrone blowing. I like Sludden. Sludden's a lovely industrious player as that third midfielder. The one problem I would have is you're playing Sludden as that third midfielder, buzzing around and maybe helping out at the back and stuff. You're leaving two inside. Where does Paul Donaghy fit in? Because like he has to play. He looks like a fish out of water because he's running around doing too much feckin' work around. He's a finisher, but does he fit in there beside McCurry and McShane, Alan?
Yeah, it's difficult to play three inside forwards like that. Like he did very well in a couple of league matches at wing forward, I think, and then we saw him in a full forward yesterday. But like he's a lovely finisher, so I think it's important to find a spot for him somewhere. You need guys coming off the bench too that can finish and have the ability to score. But you can see McCurry at the weekend. He looks like he's relishing the way Tyrone are playing now. He's probably had a frustrating few years in terms of playing as a full forward in a team like Tyrone that maybe tend to run the ball a lot, or even in the modern game playing as a corner forward. You don't tend to get a lot of kick passes in now because of the way teams are defending against you. So he got plenty of supply yesterday, and you could see the damage himself and McShane did when they got decent supply. And like for me, McCurry, and I've obviously watched him for a few years, he's so much talent, but he hasn't maybe always delivered for Tyrone based on the talent he has. And kind of seen him winning the ball over his head, Jesse. I'd never really seen
twice.
That level.
He let one of them drop. The second one drop, but twice over his head.
I'd never really seen that kind of level of going for the ball, that kind of level of aggression in him before. So maybe this new management team, in terms of the way they're playing, looking to kick it a bit more, will give him a new lease of life. And I think, if you think of the top forwards in the country, like at the moment, he's probably a little echelon below that, but he probably has the talent to get up there. So it'll be interesting to see over when he comes up against maybe better teams the next couple of games. If Tyrone manage to win a couple of games, how he fares playing like that with a supply like that inside in Croke Park when he has a little bit more space maybe to take on teams. And Colm would know him better. He has a lot of talent, but for me, he just needs to do that against one of the top teams to kind of move up a level in terms of forwards and where he stands against other forwards in the country. But he certainly looks like he's in good form coming into the Ulster semi-final.
Yeah, he definitely do. What do you make of Donaghy's role out in the top of the D? Is he spending a lot of time chasing lads, Colm, rather than being close to goal for a shot? And then when he gets the odd shot, he's forcing it then, because in his head, I'm sure he wants to get on the scoreboard. And maybe he took one off the left, which was a bit too far out and missed it. He seems a little bit confused with his role within the team. Is that fair, or?
Possibly, like Donny's a finisher. He's not a guy that's going to track back into the half back line and willingly and put in massive tackles and that. So like, yeah, he was probably a wee bit frustrated at the weekend. He was, you say, he was chasing an awful lot. He probably wasn't, getting into the angles where he wanted to be to shoot. And like I said, that's what he is. He's a guy, and he's a guy that gets the ball. And as soon as he gets the ball, he's looking a shot. He's not even thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
He is a finisher. He can kick off both feet. That's why he's so dangerous. Look,
But
he's
in
probably
in that system then that Tyrone, if they're going two inside, it almost has to be Donaghy or McCurry to go beside McShane, and you have to make that hard call.
yeah, like possibly, and McCurry probably would be better. And like knowing the way Darren plays, he could play in the half forward line. It wouldn't be an issue because he's got massive fitness levels. He's probably one of the fittest in that Tyrone team. So, but at the same time, I'm not sure he would want. I think under Mickey, Darren, he did play it in half forward line and he was tracking back and was sort of he was able to get up and down. But the big thing with McCurry at the moment is he's scoring and he's scoring heavily. So I don't see how you can move him out or keep him. You don't want him run back and trying to defend. You want him up front, being fresh, making them runs, especially the way Tyrone are playing with the kick pass in. It's obviously they have worked on it the last couple of years. They're trying, like the likes of Richie Donnelly is a fantastic kick passer. He found one at the weekend. You want to keep Darren up close to goals because he can finish. Now the one thing that for him of what McCurry needs to do is he's always been that guy on the loop. He can take the ball, get it on the loop, kick it over. The big thing is playing against better teams is you're not going to get the space to do that. So there's going to be a point in time where he's going to have to start beating men one on one, go past them. But like Colm with Cavanagh or whatnot, Clifford, whatever it is, them guys are they can shoot in the loop, but at the same time they can ultimately get a ball, take the man on one, go past him and score. And that's what the acid test will be for Darren because there's no problems with him shooting. He can shoot off both right and left. It's whether he can start going against the top teams and go a bit more direct. So Donaghy, I'm not sure how they piece him together. Because he's an out-and-out finisher.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, Conor McKenna to come back in. Tyrone, there's no doubt, when you look at the Tyrone bench and you see Tiernan McCann came on, Kennedy came on, Mark Bradley came on, McShane came on, Burns came on, and then you're leaving Conor McKenna out of that. Like, I mean, they have some serious options now. There's no doubt about that. And if you're going to start with a midfield of Kennedy and Kilpatrick, then you've got loads of options for your forward line. Even though if Matty Donnelly, I'll say it again, he definitely looks to be a little bit off the pace, and it didn't work on the inside forward line for him. So where to play him will be another. But they have loads of options. But performance of the weekend, lads, we don't have time to do a separate section of it. But I'm going to give you the nominations anyways. So obviously McFall from Derry was outstanding. What I loved about his second point was how he tripped up Bon Gallagher. As a lad's chasing you and you just put your foot to the side, trip him up. And it was a great old move of Kieran MacDonald with Mayo. He'd always put a foot across and the defender would trip up and you'd have a free shot at goals. He was outstanding, like we mentioned already. Niall O'Donnell, 3 from play, was absolutely outstanding. Darren McCurry is the obvious one, 5 from play. 4 different men marking him. That's like, you'd be probably entitled to just put a sweeper in front of him altogether rather than try 4 different men. I think that's a little bit embarrassing. Ryan O'Donoghue scored 1-6. Whether he got a nice little goal in on the near post, but he's probably lucky to make that shortlist considering who they were playing against. Paddy Clifford, very industrious, wasteful in front of goal, but very industrious the other night. The performance of the weekend has to be Chrissy McCaig, lads. We criticised here on the show loads of times. The man marking's gone out of the game. They can't do it anymore. And he gave an exhibition of man marking. He didn't care about the play. He's a leader. He just sacrificed his own game, and we could see him when he got the yellow card off camera. Now, it's illegal what he was doing, but he was pissing McBrearty off. He was turned and faced McBrearty and wouldn't let McBrearty pass by him. He was like shadowing him. McBrearty's just throwing his hands up. I think that was at the stage where the linesman told the referee to mark McCaig. But in the modern game, Alan, cornerback dogs are not dead. Sean Marty Lockhart would have looked at that and he would have given Chrissy McCaig a hug after the game.
Yeah, well, funny you mentioned Sean Marty. When I got asked who's the best defender I ever marked, Sean Marty is actually the answer. I marked him once in a qualifier game, and played with Ireland and he was exceptional. But like, I'm not surprised with Chrissy McKay. Like, he's been a top back in what's been a per Derry team maybe for a few years before this, but he's an exceptional footballer, and he's willing to play. But he can come out and play. If he was put out number 6 and he was asked to play, he can play as well. He can get up, he can kick a score. So he really is. And you talk about old school defending. Like, there is not many cornerbacks left like that, but he was obviously asked to do a job, and he did it to perfection, bar. And he'd be pissed off with the last one as well. I'd say that he didn't manage to get some sort of check or get onto McBrearty's right foot, because onto McBrearty's left foot for the last one, he just kind of got caught on the wrong side.
Yeah.
If he marks McBrearty's left foot from there, he's not scoring with his right if he forced him back. So it was the only kind of time he nearly got away from the whole day. But like, I'm not surprised by it. He's an exceptional defender and has been for a long time.
And he was centre back for the last couple of years, but the move into the cornerback has just, made a man marker out of him again. He used to play there. I remember he marked Diarmuid Connolly in an All-Ireland Club semi-final, and we were analysing before the game, how is he going to approach this? What did Chrissy do? He went out and scored 4 points off Connolly. And then told me on the show, I rang him on the Monday and says, well, I didn't actually agree with that. I wanted to mark him, but one of the selectors told me, go at him. You put him on the back foot. And he actually wanted to mark him. He ended up scoring 4 points off. He says, very good advice I got. But he loves man marking Colm. And maybe some of the cornerbacks these days, they love being footballers and they don't love him. Chrissy looks like he really enjoyed that. He enjoyed turning his back on the play and watching McBrearty and just doing that job for the team. More of that.
Yeah, look, we spoke about it for the last few weeks about this, about the art of defending, and that man on man, and that's where the game's going as well. Like, I think I know teams are still defending, but the man on man stuff's coming back, and the importance of being technically very good at defending in terms of moving your body, getting your feet right, being a wee bit aggressive, and like, typically the last number of years, I know, like, Tyrone, I can always refer back to Tyrone, obviously, in that, like, we nearly become too nice in a way, a lot of our men, because we were playing with so much comfort. You had men back and you were shifting left and right, and you didn't really have to be aggressive to players. There was always a swarm of players to help you out. Well, like, watching that, I know Derry had men back, but again, by and large, man on man, McKay was brilliant. He was, that wee bit of nasty. So I remember watching Joe.ie do it to Sean way back years ago up in Healy Park that day that Tyrone never scored in the first half, where he was just dogging him, and it was like, okay, fine limits in the game, but it was nice to see that art of defending is back, and McKay done it to T at the weekend, and just unfortunate at the end. Like, I say, that's a struggle with a defender. You can mark him out for the whole game, and just takes one chance for a forward to win the game. So look, a brilliant performance by him, and like I said, that he's he can hold his head up high from that.
Well, that's it. And just to finish up on the point, like, I wouldn't be too critical of him on the McBrearty loop, because we've talked about McBrearty and Dean Rock being the best on the loop, but the best loop you do is you loop just at a time your man's running past, and your teammate almost distracts your man or gets in the way of him kind of following you. Do you know what I mean, Alan? Like, and he nearly got to the block. I wouldn't be too critical. He's bringing cornerback play back, lads. So we should be, like, without running up the field to look for a bloody score. That annoys me. Cornerbacks should know their place. And while you talked about the modern game, Alan, I'm not about this. But I want the cornerbacks. I want the two of them to stay back, marking their man, stretch the game, and that's it. But anyways,
that's just sort of fun. So you wouldn't have to chase the cornerback back with it. But that's what it was like years ago.
Yeah,
the cornerbacks used to just mark, and you wouldn't have to worry about them going now.
In a funny way, I'd take marking Chrissy McKay. I'd take marking Chrissy McKay over Sean Powter, for example.
I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't like either, because what? Anyways, listen, we've gone over time. You have to go, Ellen. We'll leave it there. Chrissy McKay, congratulations. Performance of the weekend. We'll be back on Thursday. Big weekend next weekend. It feels like the championship is finally here, so we'll talk to you all then. Good luck.